Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to AP Psychology with me, Miss Baines, your teacher, as I roll out the content for you, my AP Psychology students, for the very first time you see and hear them. Go ahead and grab those multicolored flare tip pens, get yourself in a nice, comfy, cushiony space, and don't forget those ever important binder notes that accompany today's video, which is Unit 3, Video 4, Vision and Hearing, Part 2. I'll see you on the other side. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday with the theories of color vision. Okay, so trichromatic theory. It is also known as the Young help-outs. You need to know both of these terms. Trichromatic theory, tri for three, or three color, right? Trichromatic theory is the idea that the retina contains three different types of nerve receptor, or receiving neuron. Our cones, which are the ones that are sensitive to different colors, right? Some of the cones are receptive more to red, and some of the cones are more receptive to blue. Some of them are more receptive to green. These are the three separate cones, okay? So each of those cones are going to be receptive to one of these three colors. We have some evidence towards this because of people who are colorblind or have deficiencies in colors, the same way that other people can. Color blindness is a genetic disorder that prevents people from distinguishing between certain colors, either because they have a weakness in or a lack of one or more of three of these cones, right? Because when you have the three primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, you can pretty much make any other color in the rainbow, in the spectrum they call it. So the most common form of color blindness is the difficulty of distinguishing between red and green. If you look over to the side here, this circle here is a test for color blindness. So if you cannot see this number here in the middle, you may just be colorblind, and you might not even have known it before. If you can see a number, you'll know that it says immediately 71. Well, that's the test for color blindness. Down here, we can see people who are colorblind or red-green colorblind would probably see apples here. Yes, they know the shape, but here's a red apple and here's a green apple. To them, they look almost exactly the same. Color blindness doesn't hurt, and it doesn't really matter for the most part, but severe cases do make the world look like a black and white movie when complete color deficiency happens. In other words, you see monochromatically, like reading a newspaper. However, that is very rare, and it's not something that happens very often. This is also more common in males than it is in females. It's pretty rare to have a female be colorblind, okay? There are some issues that do come up for people with color blindness. They can't, for example, really become an electrician or work for a bomb squad, for example, right? If you can't see color, you probably shouldn't take a job that on its most basic level has color-coded parts to it. Color vision is the opponent process theory. This is a theory proposed by Herring that states these are our four primary colors, and then these are black and white. These colors also have opposed pairs. So blue and yellow are opposing pairs, and green and red are opposing pairs, and then white and black are opposing pairs. The idea here is that we have one cone that distinguishes the blue and the yellow, and another set of cones that distinguishes the red and the green, and another that helps us distinguish black from white. Okay, so that's what we call opponent process theory, and it's the evidence we have towards this. And what I want you to do is pause this video or just stare at this picture right dead center for about 30 seconds, right where my cursor is. Go ahead and pause now. I want you to stare in the middle of this white screen. You might have to blink a couple of times now, but you should be seeing the red, white, and blue American flag. This is known as the opponent process theory. The idea being here that the blue and the black get tired out, and so the only thing left for you to see are the red, white, and blues. Okay, so that's opponent process theory. Next up is our hearing module. Audition is the technical term for our sense of hearing. Let's start by doing a little bit of a review on frequency and amplitude. In terms of hearing, what is called our pitch, okay? Our pitch is the high or low sounds that we hear, and the frequency is determined by wavelength again. Remember, wavelength is the length or the distance from the peak of one wave to the peak of another wave. Just like it is in vision, the same thing goes for hearing. How long it takes for one wave to get to you is a measurement called wavelengths in hearing. So right here are long wavelengths, and these ones here are high wavelengths. We can hear sounds here of about 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. The best hearing is around 30 to 40,000 hertz, and then a higher frequency. So these waves here mean there's going to be a higher pitch of sound, okay? So you're really, really high-pitched sounds, like maybe the squeakiness of Ziggy and Martha back there, or the sounds of a flute or a recorder, if you ever played one of those screeching instruments, like an actress that has a squeaky voice, like maybe Jennifer Tilly or somebody. And then there are these long wavelengths, meaning that the frequency is lower, and it means people make low-pitched sounds, or a growl of a tiger, or like my bulldog Lulu when she snores or growls. Well, here, let me just show you. Hi, Lulu. Did you have a good day at school today? Where's your homework? Where's your homework? Lulu. Lulu, where's your mama? Where's your homework? What'd you do with your homework? Uh-oh. Does that mean you ate it? Lulu, did you do your homework? What do you mean you didn't do it? Do you love your mommy? I love you. I love you. Or the bass or a cello in terms of our string instruments, or a tuba for our brass instrument. Super low pitches. Someone like Earl Grey Jones, for example.
Scar. Drop him. Sarabi and I didn't see you at the presentation of Simba. That hairball is my son and your future king. Don't turn your back on me, Scar. Is that a challenge? Everything the light touches is our kingdom. A king's time as ruler rises and falls like the sun.
I think you pretty much get the picture here. Let's stop here for a moment to listen to a couple of female voices that have a high-pitched voice, and then somebody with a low-pitched voice.
Number 4, Jennifer Tilly.
By the way, Miss Tilly, can I have your autograph? I'm a big fan.
She can do sexy, sweet, and downright terrifying. When Tilly first started out in acting, she had a few directors who tried to make her change her voice. But to that, she said, hell no.
You're right, Mr. Ree. I am tired of getting kicked around.
Good for you!
It's her trademark. It's made her memorable, and it's led the way throughout her career. She's been acting since 1983, and she's done it all. Live action, video games, and cartoons.
No, it isn't. Dogs sweat through their paws. You're such a know-it-all, Brian. You don't even know about your own body.
Outside of Number 1, Sheree Agdashlu.
Don't laugh loud. Just, you have a thick voice, and I'm like, yes, I do know.
For our number 1 spot, we went with an actress whose name literally means famous. Her deep, timbering voice gives her an air of authority, and her Persian accent lends it an exotic twist.
The producers who are working with me, who would like to work with me, that I can do comedy for Christ's sake. Just don't give me tragedies and dramas.
She's often cast as doctors and other such badass women, which is a consistently good fit given that she's inspiring in her own right. Agdashlu established herself as an actress in Iran, moved to England at the start of the Iranian Revolution, and studied politics before returning to acting. Between her voice and her raw talent as an actress, we just can't get enough of her.
I give an arm and a leg for a complex character like her.
Right. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you get the picture now. For both men and women, there are both low and high-pitched voices. Next up is frequency. It tells us a little bit more about pitch, okay? Which is the intensity of a sound that is the loudest. So intensity is measured by our amplitude, hence an amplifier, right? That's what you plug your electric guitar in order to amplify it or make people in the very back of your audience be able to hear it through a speaker that's connected to that amplifier. So amplifier or amplitude is the lid or the height of the sound wave. Remember how we talked about the waves in the wave pool? If there's more water, there's more intense draws and pulls, right? So for when it's louder, the sound wave will be taller or higher. The same way that tall waves in vision work for bright colors and bright lights is the same way that they work for loud sounds or high-pitched decibels. Okay, we have a range in decibels starting with 0. So 0 decibels would be our first threshold of hearing, or the amount of sound that we would need in order to be able to hear somebody just so ever softly saying something, whispering. Okay, that would be like a 10 would be where you no longer have to lean in to listen. So more than a whisper, a low talking. A 20 might be when you hear things like the leaves rustling outside or a raccoon in the distance getting into your garbage. Or the wind when it is blowing to the point where it's howling but far away, it's a 30 decibel. This would be about the level of sound you would hear in, say, a quiet bedroom when something goes bump in the night, or in a library when the librarian goes, shh, right? Because it's supposed to be super quiet. So when people even talk at the regular level, it sounds like a high decibel. So a decibel of, say, 50 then is going to be like background noise in the middle of your neighborhood. You hear people yelling, kids crying, kids playing, arguments, dogs barking, all that sort of thing. A 70 is kind of just normal noise on the sidewalk, the passing by of a car, vroom, a big city bus kneeling down, or backing up, whoosh, beep, 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 beep. At about a 90 decibel, right, you're on the platform and hear a train that passes. That's going to be at about 100. A rock concert, 110. Okay, so an air raid then, or a siren, or any siren like ambulances or fire trucks are going to be a little bit louder. Your sirens and horns will be honking at about a 125 and up. And it goes way up from there, okay? So we're going to go over the different parts of the ear and their functions, just like you needed to know the different parts of the eye, and the brain, and a neuron. You need to know how sound waves travel from the outside world into our brain, okay? So we're going to start with the pinna here. The pinna is the funnel-shaped part, or the outside part of your ear right here. It's called that because it looks like a funnel, right? Like a round funnel. It literally funnels in the sound waves as you're hearing something. The sound waves come in from over here, and then they travel through this auditory canal here, which is the part that you can stick your finger into, or say a Q-tip, right? But that is actually very dangerous. Why? Because at the back of that is your eardrum, which is a very thin layer of skin, and it's delicate, and it gets punctured easily. This is called the tympanic membrane. The tympanic membrane is spelled out here for you. And so the eardrum, or the tympanic membrane, is a soft tissue in the back of your auditory canal, and it vibrates with sound waves, okay? So think of it like the outer layer of a drum, that skin on a drum. But the eardrum is on a much softer level. So all of those things right there make up our outer ear, okay? Our middle ear is going to be the bones of our ear. The hammer right here, and then the anvil here, and then the stirrup is this over here. The stirrup is what bangs on the top of the semicircular canal over here. And then there's this sort of fluid inside of the semicircular canal. And the semicircular canal, with that fluid in there, is actually what keeps our bodies on balance. What that fluid is in there? Vestibular sense. So that's what allows you to balance, and it's with that fluid that allows you to do so. When that stirrup bangs on that semicircular canal, the fluid moves it. It actually waits, right, like it waves in water, and the fluid moves then and goes to the cochlea. And the cochlea is a snail-shaped structure right here, okay? Inside the cochlea is a basilar membrane. The basilar membrane contains a bunch of different hair cells called cilia. Okay, those hair cells or cilia are the actual point at which transduction, remember transduction? It's the point where waves are transformed into neural impulses. So these hair cells or cilia that are the waves of the water and the fluid inside the basilar membrane is that movement. It's going to change the sound waves into neural impulses, okay? So think of those little cilia, those hair cells, like little seaweed stringy things at the bottom of a lake, right? Flowing with the ebb and the flow of the movement of the water. When it's with the waves, then that's exactly what's going on inside with your ear cilia. The auditory nerve comes off the back of the cochlea, and then those neural impulses that were transduced inside the basilar membrane get sent from the auditory nerve and then eventually to our auditory cortex. So let's talk about the cochlea. The cochlea is a fluid-filled tube in the inner ear. Like I said, the inside of the cochlea is the basilar membrane. And inside the basilar membrane are those little cilias or hair cells. That is where transduction happens, okay? So let's watch a short video of the journey of sound going through your ear and what creates this.
Have you ever wondered how sounds make their way from the source all the way to your brain? Take a trumpet, for instance. When it's played, it makes sound waves in the air. The outer ear catches the waves, which then travel through a narrow passageway called the ear canal. The sound waves reach the eardrum, which is a membrane roughly half the size of a dime. They make the eardrum vibrate, which in turn vibrates 3 tiny bones called the malleus, incus, and stapes. These bones amplify or increase the sound vibrations and send them to the cochlea. The cochlea is shaped like a snail and is the size of a garden pea. It is filled with fluid, and the sound vibrations make this fluid ripple, which creates waves. Hair-like structures called stereocilia sit on top of hair cells and are grouped together as hair cell bundles inside the cochlea. The hair cells inside the cochlea ride these waves, and the hair bundles are moved. The hair bundle on top of the hair cell turns these movements into electrical signals. As the hair bundles are moved, ions rush into the top of the hair cells, causing the release of chemicals at the bottom of the hair cells. The chemicals bind to the auditory nerve cells and create an electrical signal, which travels along the auditory nerve to the brain. Different hair cells respond to different frequencies of sound. The hair cells at the base of the cochlea detect higher-pitched sounds, such as a piccolo or flute. The hair cells toward the top of the spiral detect progressively lower-pitched sounds, such as a trumpet or trombone. At the very top or apex of the spiral, the hair cells detect the lowest-pitched sounds, such as a tuba. The auditory nerve carries the electrical signal to the brain, which interprets the messages as sounds that we recognize and understand.
So let's talk about the different theories here, or audition. So the first type is frequency theory. Frequency theory is one that states that the rate or amount of waves traveling up the auditory nerve matches the frequency of a tone. So the idea here is if you have a lot of waves, right? A very large or frequent amount of waves, the hair cells or the cilia are going to move at the same pace and are going at the same speed then, and that determines the pitch. Our other theory is place theory, which is what we just saw in the video. Place theory suggests that hair cells at different parts of the basilar membrane perceive different pitches, and so it's called frequency theory. It is the idea that the amount of or number of waves determines the pitch, and then those hair cells control how fast or how slow they are moving is the pitch that we then end up hearing. Place theory, again, is certain hair cells perceiving certain pitches. Okay, these are both theories, and so right now they're both accepted in the psychological community as a way to explain how hearing works. Some scientists believe in one theory, some might believe in the other, but there's a lot of research that still needs and can be done. Localization of sound is next. So because we have two ears and they are on either side of our head, this is where the sound reaches first. how we determine where that sound is coming from. So maybe sometimes you'll see a dog who hears something weird, right? And they like sharply turn their head, and then their ears pull out and back as if they're opening up, right? They're trying to determine, where is that sound coming from? Who is that, right? And so when we hear something, we can usually turn our head to the direction or determine which way that sound is coming from. So let's talk about hearing loss. Just like when you drive your car off of a lot, it depreciates in value almost immediately, right? Your car is worth a few $1,000s less the moment you drive away. It decreases in value. Well, it's the same thing with your hearing. As you use it, the more it works for you, the more it deteriorates, or the more you lose it. You use it, you lose it. There's something connected to this, and we call it noise-induced hearing loss. And this is over time because you are using those tiny little hair cells, those cilia. They get tired and depleted and damaged. And over time, you lose the ability to hear certain pitches. So my hearing is worse than your hearing because I am older and my hair cells or my cilia have been used longer than yours. Okay? This is why listening to music super loud with your earbuds or using machinery like a drill or loud technology without protective headphones is just begging your ears to quit on you at too young of an age. Tinnitus is generally any sound that is so loud in decibel that it produces a ringing of your ears. Well, this is the stuff that causes ear damage. So basically anything they say over between 85 and 90 decibel range causes damage to those hair cells, those cilia. It does happen slowly and over time, but it does happen. And so we all have this noise-induced hearing loss at some point in our lives. And that's why sometimes older people can't hear as well. High-intensity sounds can actually tear off the hair cells or the cilia of the inner ear. So that is something to make sure about, that you're not putting really, really loud music into your ears, because you can damage some of those cilia or those hair cells, which are completely and totally irreplaceable. You cannot regrow them, and they will never come back. So while we're on the topic, there's actually two different types of actual hearing loss. So conduction deafness is hearing loss that is caused by damage to the mechanical systems that conduct the waves to the cochlea. So anything in front of the cochlea, right? That would be the bones in the ears, the eardrum, the auditory canal. Anything that is damaged there would be conduction deafness, meaning that those pieces are not able to transfer the sound waves, okay? This type of deafness may be corrected. They can be, quote, corrected with external hearing aids. The other type of hearing loss is sensory neural deafness. Sensory neural deafness being sensations, right? And neural being like nerves, so nerve damage, right? So sensory neural deafness is hearing loss that is caused by damage either to the receptor cells, the nerve cells, right, the neurons that are in your ear, and the hair cells in the cochlea, or to the auditory nerve itself. So this is sometimes called nerve deafness, and this is actually damage to the receptor cells that transduce or transfer the sound waves to the nerve or neural impulses, or to the auditory nerve, which transmits the neural impulses to the brain. So this type of damage is permanent deafness. This really cannot be corrected through surgery alone. However, cochlear implant has an electronic device that can provide a sense of sound to someone who has nerve deafness with an implant. This cochlear implant, which you can see here, does not restore normal hearing, okay? But when the cochlear implant does do, it gives a deaf person a useful representation of the sounds in the environment. So basically, the cochlear implant is acting as those receptor cells or the auditory nerve and is taking the place of them. And so that we're not repairing that nerve damage or fixing the receptor cells, we are truly just kind of mimicking them with another auditory device. Pretty miraculous, huh? Okay, well, that's all I have for you today on seeing, vision, and hearing. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye now.